The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong.
The American people this week have watched as the culture of Washington corruption was laid bare in a way that for many confirms their suspicions and for others shatters their trust in the entire system. The Durham report that showed the Trump-Russia collusion hoax scheme, whatever you want to call it, went to the highest levels of our government. The FBI and the IRS being used as political weapons for the benefit of Democrats and to interfere in our elections. New bank records also showing millions of dollars flowing to the Bidens from overseas accounts and possible legal violations there as well. Americans are asking, what happens now? And can we trust the system? I want to welcome in our panel to have this conversation. Darren Mott is a retired FBI supervisory special agent and host of the Cyber Guy podcast. Also, former IRS agent Michael Sullivan, former Trump 2016 foreign policy advisor and Newsmax contributor George Papadopoulos, and finally, former Trump campaign aide and author of the book Wicked Game, Rick Gates. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Darren, I want to start with you first. The FBI appears to be the weapon of choice for the American left to intimidate and destroy people for political gain. We've heard from several whistleblowers on Capitol Hill this week. We have new information coming from the Durham report. Your reaction, and how do we create greater accountability within the agency to protect the rights of every American?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Thank you so much for having me. In my 20 years in the FBI, I spent 13 years in management and leadership as a supervisory special agent. And what I saw during that time was a dramatic shift from the FBI's original mission to be the federal law enforcement arm to investigate crime across the country to an intelligence agency that occurred under Robert Mueller when he became the director. And this led to a lot of leadership changes. It led to a change within the Bureau as to its original mission. And in your question, how do you create accountability? I think the problem resides at FBI headquarters. You have a bloat of leadership there for people that are not necessarily good leaders and are not doing the leadership part for the right reason, the right way to serve the American people. In the field offices, in the legal attaché offices, you have FBI agents, FBI support personnel who are still doing those right things for the right way. But the people that are good leaders wash out of the program simply because the method at which they create leaders is broken, in my opinion. And I think the correction here is we have to find a director that has past experience as an FBI agent in the past to understand what the true mission of the Bureau is. The last 3 directors have been attorneys from the DOJ.
Yeah, one of the things also is that, a lot of people don't realize there's very little accountability built into the model for the FBI. You can't take your situation to court like you can with the DEA or other agencies. It's an entirely closed universe, and so that's why these whistleblowers usually just kind of get either swept under the rug or pushed out. Michael, I want to go to you. You worked at the IRS. Now, and let's go back here. Going back to that Lois Lerner scandal during the Obama years, the IRS has been exposed for having an anti-Republican, anti-conservative bias and being overtly political. We've now learned through a whistleblower that due to his report about the way the Hunter Biden investigation was being handled at the agency, he and his team may have been the victim of retaliation from the Biden administration. IRS agents were also sent to journalist Matt Taibbi's home, he believes, to intimidate him. Your reaction, and what do you think can be done to protect Americans from a politicized IRS?
Yeah, you need a whole new government to go ahead and fix this. It's not going to be. Let's face it. Everyone knows here it's not going to be fixed under this administration. If you're a whistleblower today, just like Boyle said, I was shocked at that testimony the other day. To hear that the FBI is going to crush you. They moved this guy. They wouldn't even give him his clothes and all his furniture for 2 weeks, and then when he got to his new POD, they went ahead and let him go. So, at the end of the day, I would never want to work for the government again. You can't speak out about it. The problem is there's no accountability. When the government does wrong, they just do wrong and they crush you just like a freight train coming down. So what's the government worker to do?
Yeah, and just a real quick follow-up. What can be done at the IRS? Does there need to be reform? Is there something Congress should be doing to try to reduce the politicization there?
Yeah, it's all the government has to fix it. Nobody else can fix it at the IRS level. The commissioner can't fix it. He gets his orders from above. Until the Congress comes in and fixes this, nothing is going to happen. Until you have a president that cares about this, nothing is going to happen, period.
George, Rick, each of you, your lives, your families, your careers were impacted directly by Crossfire Hurricane. Which had all the hallmarks of a criminal conspiracy from President Obama on down to mislead the public and delegitimize Donald Trump and his administration. Here's the former president speaking with our own Rob Schmidt earlier this week, reacting to the Durham report.
It's a great vindication, and it feels good. And the report has been, wildly praised. I wish it could have come faster, but the detail that he went into, 308 pages, the detail is extraordinary. And all of these people, I guess you could call it treason. You could call it a lot of different things. But this should never be allowed to happen in our country again.
George, your reaction to the Durham report, and what should Congress do next?
Well, thank you for having me, Tom. Look, this is a profound indictment of the U.S. intelligence agencies. And I think that the self-inflicted wound that the FBI did to itself based on the politicized leadership, not the rank and file, far outweighs what any foreign adversary could potentially have ever done to what should have been our premier law enforcement agency. When the Durham report came out, I had predicted many of the conclusions that we just saw recently that so many Americans had no idea even existed, including that this investigation should have never started. It was baseless. It was on no foundation, no evidence, and that it was really concocted not only by the Clinton campaign, but in collusion with the Comey FBI. The Comey FBI was not held accountable, and we saw the politicized intelligence agencies once again interfere in the 2020 election. This is why accountability matters. Because if the Durham report came out 2 or 3 years ago, potentially we would have a different president today. We would have a Hunter Biden story, which was not suppressed, but was allowed to be disseminated around the world, and especially in the United States, to educate the American voters. But we didn't have that. We had the Clinton campaign colluding with the FBI in 2016. We had the Biden campaign colluding with the CIA in 2020. And moving forward, we have to assure that both of these agencies do not put their fingers on either justice or the truth or interfere in another election again. And that starts with Congress doing its job, including codifying guardrails to assure this doesn't happen or potentially defunding the organization until changes emerge.
Rick, there are a lot of Americans. They're horrified by the way that the deep state is manipulating the government against them. And we saw this a lot also in the pandemic with the symbiotic relationship between big tech and the FBI and the White House, manipulating information. What should happen here and so that there is some sort of accountability? And what do you do to ensure that what happened to you doesn't happen again?
Yeah, first of all, I wish, nobody has to go through what probably George and I had to go through, and especially now that we know the truth. So I think when you look at the Durham report, it's important to focus on the two aspects of it. You've got John Durham that got the truth, the information, and the facts out, which is very important. What we know today versus what we knew 6 years, I'll take that. That's a win for all of us, and I think that's why President Trump feels vindicated. The other part on accountability, much bigger problem, much bigger issue in terms of dealing with how we tackle that. Who is going to be held accountable moving forward? I'm pretty confident none of these people that were involved in this are going to be held accountable. I may be the pessimist in this. Maybe one day they will be. But right now, it's very frustrating to see people like Clapper, Brennan, Clinton, Comey all get off with a free pass just because they were part of the government politicization machine. What Congress can do, there are a few things that they can do, whether they'll do them or not. They can certainly pull the purse strings. That's going to be a little difficult because it's a divided Congress. They can change laws. They can change the laws that impact the FBI. Again, that's going to take both chambers. I don't know if we get there. But more importantly, they can increase the ability for whistleblowers to have protection. And I think this is one of the biggest things. When I was going through my situation, we had a number of good FBI agents that were talking about the corruption within the overall system. And they couldn't do anything with it. They had to protect their reputations, their careers, and their families. So I think The building blocks are there. I think if you get these whistleblowers out there to talk about this stuff, but make sure they have protections, that's something Congress can really do and help with.
That's something that it really should be top on the agenda for Republicans in Congress to put a reform agenda in place, even if the Democrats won't vote on it, to ensure that there's some accountability here. All right, guys, I've got to go. Darren, Mott, Michael Sullivan, George Papadopoulos, and Rick Gates. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.